Governor Huntsman, you know, the upside to this is I guess you could fly with your shoes on. The downside is who does the job the next day.
Let me just say, while this is an important discussion that we're having, we've spent about 15 minutes now on Homeland Security. The greatest gift we could give this country on the 10th year anniversary, Rick, is a Homeland Security Department that really works, that doesn't give people a sense when they walk through they're going to get shaken down, a department that doesn't make us all feel like there's a fortress security mentality that is not American. And I've got to say there's something wrong with that. But I'm guessing there are a whole lot of people tuned in around this country who are saying, why are we spending all this time talking about the smaller issues? We've got 14 million people unemployed. We've got millions more in this country who are so dispirited they've quit looking. This is a human tragedy that we're talking about. Moms and dads and families that completely go without. And all I would ask the people here and the people tuning in around this country, look at where we stand in terms of how we are going to get this country back on its feet. And I just want to point out that we have offered, based on where I've been and what I have done, as governor of a state where we became #1 in job creation, where we fixed the economy, made it the best economy for business in this entire country. We've got to get back on our feet. This is a crisis situation. While all these other issues are important, let's not lose sight, folks, of the bottom line here. We've got to get back in the game as a country. We've got to make this economy work.
Governor Perry, you can't have much of a workforce without a basis of education. As you know, your state ranks among the worst in the country in high school graduation rates, as we established. Yet you recently signed a budget cut for billions in education funding. You pushed for greater cuts that were in the budget that the legislature passed. You've said that education is a top priority, but explain cutting it the way you did, please.
Well, I think the reductions that we made were thoughtful reductions, and the fact of the matter is Texas has made great progress in the 10 years that I've been governor. From the standpoint of our graduation rates now are up to 84%, higher than they've been during any period of time before that. We're seeing the type of commitment. Our 4th and 8th grader, African American and Hispanics on the NAEPS test, they were some of the highest in the country. We're making progress. When you share the border with Mexico, and when you have as many individuals that we have coming into the state of Texas, we have a unique situation in our state. But the fact is, I stand by our record from what we've done with the resources that we've had, and I think that the reductions that we put in place were absorbed by our schools, and we will continue to have one of the finest workforces made available. When Caterpillar and Toyota and eBay and Facebook move to your state, it's not because you've got a workforce that's not capable.
Time, Governor. Speaker Gingrich, this reminds me of Race to the Top, the Obama administration education program. You supported it. Governor Perry opted out. Some people don't like it. What did you like about it?
I liked it very much the fact that it talked about charter schools. It's the one place I found to agree with President Obama. If every parent in America had a choice of the school their child went to, if that school had to report its scores, if there was a real opportunity, you'd have a dramatic improvement. I visited schools where 3 years earlier there were fights, there were dropouts, there was no hope. They were taken over by a charter school in downtown Philadelphia, and all of a sudden the kids didn't fight anymore because they were disciplined. They were all asked every day, what college are you going to? Not are you going to go to college, what college are you going to? And so I am very much in favor of school choice. My personal preference would be to have a Pell Grant for K through 12 so that every parent could pick with their child any school they wanted to send them to, public or private, and enable them to have the choice. I don't think you're ever going to reform the current bureaucracies. And the president was, I thought, showing some courage in taking on the teachers union to some extent in offering charter schools. And I wanted, frankly, to encourage more development towards choice.
I want to introduce another line of questioning by introducing yet another colleague of ours, Jose Diaz-Balart from our sister network Telemundo. Hey, my friend, how are you?
Good evening. Nice to see you all. Nice to see you all. I want to talk about a subject that was very dear to the heart of President Reagan, which was immigration reform. As you know, he was the last U.S. president to sign immigration reform in 1986. All of you, I think, have said that you don't think immigration reform should be discussed until the border is secure. And Governor, I'd like to ask you, border state governor, what specifically in your mind would make the border secure?
Well, the first thing you need to do is have boots on the ground. We've had a request into this administration since January of 2009 for 1,000 Border Patrol agents, our National Guard troops, and working towards 3,000 Border Patrol. That's just on the Texas border. There's another 50% more for the entire Mexican border. So you can secure the border, but it requires a commitment of the federal government of putting those boots on the ground, the aviation assets in the air. We think Predator drones could be flown, that real-time information coming down to the local and the state and the federal law enforcement, and you can secure the border. And at that particular point in time, then you can have an intellectually appropriate discussion about immigration reform. For the President of the United States to go to El Paso, Texas and say that the border is safer than it's ever been, either he has some of the poorest intel of a president in the history of this country, or he was an abject liar to the American people. It is not safe on that border.
Governor, specifically, do you agree or disagree with some of the issues that the governor of Texas says as far as what you would consider enough to be able to declare the border safe?
Well, first, we ought to have a fence. Secondly,
the whole fence, 2,600 miles.
We got to have a fence, or a technologically approved system to make sure that we know who's coming into the country, number one. Number two, we ought to have enough agents to secure that fence and to make sure that people are coming over caught. But the third thing, and I learned this when I was with Border Patrol agents in San Diego, and they said, look, they can always get a ladder to go over the fence, right, and people will always run to the country. The reason they come in such great numbers is because we've left the magnet on. And I said, what do you mean the magnet? And they said when employers are willing to hire people who are here illegally, that's a magnet and it draws them in. And we wanted to talk about sanctuary cities, giving tuition breaks to the kids of illegal aliens, employers that knowingly hire people that are here illegally. Those things also have to be stopped. If we want to secure the border, we have to make sure we have a fence, technologically determining where people are, enough agents to oversee it, and turn off that magnet. We can't talk about amnesty. We cannot give amnesty to those who come here illegally. We got 4.7 million people waiting in line legally. Let's let those people come in first, and those that are here illegally, they shouldn't have a special deal.
Speaker Gingrich, your perception on immigration reform, and you've been, I think, in some ways a little different on your initial position.
Well, look, I think we have to find a way to get to a country in which everybody who's here is here legally. But you started by referencing President Reagan.
That's right.
In 1986, I voted for the Simpson-Mazzoli Act, which in fact did grant some amnesty in return for promises. President Reagan wrote in his diary that year that he signed the act because we were going to control the border and we were going to have an employer program where it was a legal guest worker program. That's in his diary. I'm with President Reagan. We ought to control the border. We ought to have a legal guest worker program. We ought to outsource it, frankly, to American Express, Visa, and MasterCard so there's no counterfeiting, which there will be with the federal government. We should be very tough on employers once you have that legal program. We should make English the official language of government. We should insist that first-generation immigrants who come here learn American history in order to become citizens. We should also insist that American children learn American history. And then we have to find a way to deal with folks who are already here, some of whom, frankly, been here 25 years, are married with kids, live in our local neighborhood, go to our church. It's got to be done in a much more humane way than thinking you're going to automatically deport millions of people.
Senator, your solution?
Well, my solution is very similar to Newt Gingrich's. Look, I'm the son of an Italian immigrant. I think immigration is one of the great things that has made this country the dynamic country that it continues to be. People who are drawn because of the ideals of this country. And so we should not have a debate talking about how we don't want people to come to this country. But we want them to come here like my grandfather and my father came here. They made sacrifices. They came in the 1920s. There were no promises. There were no government benefits. They came because they wanted to be free and they wanted to be good law-abiding citizens. So we have to have a program in place that sets that parameter that says, you're going to come to this country, come here according to the rules. It's a very good first step. that the first thing you do here is a legal act, not an illegal act.
A quick follow-up, 30 seconds. So there are 11 million people that fait accompli. They're here. What do you do with them if you are able to secure the border?
Well, I think we can have that discussion, that whether what we do with people, how long they've been here, whether they have other types of records, but to have that discussion right now and pull the same trick that was pulled in 1986, we said, well, we'll promise to do this if you do that. No more. We are going to secure the border first, and that's the most important thing to do, and then we'll have the discussion afterwards.
Congresswoman, you said the fence, that you believe the fence is fundamental as an integral part of controlling the border. Let's say that in 2012 or 2013, there's a fence, the border is secure, gasoline is $2 a gallon. What do you do then with 11 million people, as the Speaker says, many of whom have U.S.-born children here? What do you do?
Well, again, understand the context and the problem that we're dealing with. In Mexico right now, we're dealing with narco-terrorists. This is a very serious problem. To not build a border or a fence on every part of that border would be, in effect, to yield United States sovereignty not only to our nation anymore, but to yield it to another nation. That we cannot do. One thing that the American people have said to me over and over again, and I was just last week down in Miami. I was visiting the Bay of Pigs Museum with Cuban Americans. I was down at the Versailles Cafe. I met with a number of people, and it's very interesting. The Hispanic American community wants us to stop giving taxpayer-subsidized benefits to illegal aliens, and they want us to stop giving taxpayer-subsidized benefits to their children as well.
A quick 30-second rebuttal on the specific question. The fence is built. The border is under control. What do you do with 11.5 million people who are here without documents and with U.S.-born children?
Well, that's right. And again, it is sequential, and it depends upon where they live, how long they have been here, if they have a criminal record. All of those things have to be taken into place. But one thing that we do know, our immigration law worked beautifully back in the 1950s up until the early 1960s, when people had to demonstrate that they had money in their pocket, they had no contagious diseases, they weren't a felon, they had to agree to learn to speak the English language, they had to learn American history and the Constitution, and the one thing they had to promise is that they would not become a burden on the American taxpayer.
Thank you.
That's what we have to enforce.
Mr. Cain.
Let's make sure. Let's solve all of the problems. It's not one problem. I do believe we can secure the border with a combination of boots on the ground, technology, and a fence. But we got three other problems. And to get to we got to secure the border. Secondly, let's promote the path to citizenship that's already there. We don't need a new one. We just need to clean up the bureaucracy that's slowing the process down and discouraging people. Third thing we need to do, enforce the laws that are there. And the way we do it, empower the states. I believe that the people closest to the problem are the best ones to be able to solve that problem, empower the states to do what the federal government hasn't done, can't do, and won't do. This is how we solve the entire problem.
Thank you, Governor.
I would just have to say that I agree with so much of what has been said here today. President Reagan, when he made his decision back in 1987, he saw this as a human issue. And I hope that all of us, as we deal with this immigration issue, will always see it as an issue that revolves around real human beings. Yes, they came here in an illegal fashion, and yes, they should be punished in some form or fashion. I have two daughters who came to this country, one from China, one from India, legally. I see this issue through their eyes. We can find a solution. If President Reagan were here, he would speak to the American people, and he would lay out in hopeful, optimistic terms how we can get there, remembering full well that we're dealing with human beings here. We have to create. But let me just say one thing about legal immigration. Let's not lose sight of the fact that our legal immigration system is broken.
That's right.
And if we want to do something about attracting brain power to this country, if we want to lift real estate values, for example, why is it that Vancouver is the fastest growing real estate market in the world today? They allow immigrants in legally, and it lifts all boats, and we need to focus as much on legal immigration.
Congressman. Your thoughts?
Obviously, it's a very big problem. I think we need to remove the incentive, easy road to citizenship. Nobody has mentioned the fact that they qualify for benefits as well, you know, the welfare benefits that we shouldn't have to give it. The state of Texas shouldn't be forced to provide free health care and free education. But there is a mess down there. It's a big mess, and it's the drug war that's going on there, and our drug laws are driving this. So now we're killing thousands and thousands of people. That makes it much more complicated. But the people who want big fences and guns, sure, we could secure the borders. A barbed wire fence with machine guns, that would do the trick. I don't believe that's what America is all about. I just really don't. We can enforce our law. If we had a healthy economy, this wouldn't be such a bad deal. People are worrying about jobs. But every time you think about this toughness on the border and ID cards and real IDs, think that it's a penalty against the American people, too. I think this fence business is designed and may well be used against us and keep us in. In economic turmoil, the people want to leave with their capital, and there's capital controls and there's people control. So every time you think of a fence keeping all those bad people out, think about those fences maybe being used against us, keeping us in.
To my colleague, Jose Diaz-Villar, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take our final break now. When we come back, the final portion of our debate from the Reagan Presidential Library right after this. Back, and as we said, this is the final portion of our debate. The campaigns have told us they wish not to have anything close to a lightning round, but let's just say we'd like the frequency and velocity of the questions to quicken in this segment. We'll try to move it along and fit a lot in. Starting with you, Governor Romney, are you a member of the Tea Party?
I don't think you carry cards in the Tea Party. I believe in a lot of what the Tea Party believes in. The Tea Party believes that government's too big, taxing too much, and that we ought to get to the work of getting Americans to work. So I put together a plan with a whole series of points of how we can get America's economy going again. Tea Party people like that. So if the Tea Party is for keeping government small and spending down and helping us create jobs, then, hey, I'm for the Tea Party.
Governor Perry, you missed this at the last debate. At the previous debate, everyone on stage raised their hand to say they would, I want to get this exactly right, not have accepted a debt deal that included $10 in spending cuts for every $1 in tax increases. We've been anxious to get you on the record now that you have jumped into this. Would you take that deal?
I join my fellow participants here. What we should have been looking at is a way to get the spending under control, and capping it, cutting it, and getting a balanced budget amendment. When you get a balanced budget amendment in Washington, D.C., you will finally start getting the snake's head cut off. I mean, the fact of the matter is, until you get a balanced budget amendment, I don't care whether Democrats or Republicans are going to be in control in Washington, D.C., balanced budget amendment, and then the American people can go to sleep at night with a little more comfort that they're going to wake up and not be broke in the morning.
Did anyone else who had their hand up at that last debate want to amend your comment or vote since then, Congresswoman Bachmann?
Well, what I wanted to say is there's someone else who would join us in that agreement, and that would be Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan made a deal where he took $3 in spending cuts for $1 in tax increases. And in fact, what happened is that there ended up being $3 in tax increases and $1 in tax cuts. That's the problem with Washington, D.C. I've seen it all the time. That's why I've been leading on this issue for the last 5 years, and why we can't trust the status quo in Washington, D.C. We have to have a president with a core sense of conviction that's going to fight on these issues and recognize. And so we would welcome the former president to this club.
Governor Huntsman, you said some interesting things about pledges. Everyone up here is taking a pledge not to raise taxes. Dangerous business to you?
I'd love to get everybody to sign a pledge to take no pledges. I have a pledge to my wife, and I pledge allegiance to my country. But beyond that, no pledges. I think it diminishes the political discussion. I think it jeopardizes your ability to lead once you get there. And I started when I was approached when I first ran for governor in 2004. someone who wanted to pin me down on taxes. I said, no thanks, I'm not going to sign it. I didn't raise taxes. We had historic tax cuts in our state. So look at somebody's record. That's always a pretty good indicator and barometer of where they're likely to go.
I wanted to go back to your comments on 9/11 to ask kind of an obvious follow-up. Do you think we're safer today?
I think we've lost our confidence as a country. I think we have had our innocence shattered. I think 10 years later, we look at the situation and we say, we have 100,000 troops in Afghanistan. This is not about nation building in Afghanistan. This is about nation building at home. Our core is broken. We are weak. We have got to strengthen ourselves. I say we've got to bring those troops home. In Afghanistan, the reality is it is an asymmetrical counter-terror effort. We need intelligence, we need special forces, and we need some training on the ground. But I think one way to commemorate our 10-year anniversary of 9/11, remembering the 3,000 plus people who died in New York and in Pennsylvania and in Washington, is to say it's time for this country to set a goal for ourselves. We're going to get our core fixed. We're going to do some nation building right here at home.
Time, Governor. Governor Romney, would you agree that there's a crisis of confidence in the United States right now?
Oh, absolutely. People are convinced that we're going to go into another recession. I sure hope we don't. People are worried about whether they can make their bills at the end of the month. A lot of folks have stopped looking for work. People who have jobs are worried they might lose their job. Look, we have a crisis in confidence, in part because we have an absence of leadership. We selected as a president a guy who'd never worked in the private sector, a person who'd never been a leader, who'd never been able to get anything moving. And we said, let's let this guy run the country. And he's just over his head. And right now he's flailing about. We'll see his plan tomorrow. It'll be more like the plans in the past. We need to have an individual lead this country who not only loves America, but has the experience to get us back on track of being competitive globally. That's what I put together. I want to make it very clear. I put together an outline of what it takes to get America back on the right track. It's a whole series of changes that have to occur, from energy policy to tax policy, regulatory policy. It changes our trade policies. We've got to change the way we're structured economically if we want to get people back to work in this country and keep America, as we've always been, this extraordinary job machine. We can be the best place in the world to be in the middle class again, with jobs plentiful for our kids and for each one of us that are looking for those jobs today. I know how to do that, and that's why I'm in this race.
Time, Governor, to John Harris.
Governor Perry, as we approach the 9/11 anniversary, I'd like to stick with national security for a moment. You recently said, quote, I do not believe that America should fall subject to a foreign policy of military adventurism. Looking back, do you think President George W. Bush was too quick to launch military intervention without thinking through the risks?
I was making a comment about a philosophy. I don't think America needs to be in the business of adventurism. But let me just say something about the President of the United States. And I know he's taken lots of slings and arrows here today. But one thing that I want to say that he did do that I agree with is that he maintained the chase, and we took out a very bad man in the form of bin Laden, and I tip my hat to him. I give more props to those Navy SEALs that did the job. But the other thing that this president done, he has proven for once and for all that government spending will not create one job. Keynesian policy and Keynesian theory is now done. We'll never have to have that experiment on America again. And I might add that he kept Gitmo open against the will of his base. And I'm glad he did that. Americans safer for it.
Sir, just if I could quickly follow on that. You said you were making a philosophical comment, but it's hard to understand philosophy without understanding specifics. Where are some of the places where you think we've seen military adventurism?
As I said, that was a philosophical statement, that Americans don't want to see their young men and women going into foreign countries without a clear reason that American interests are at stake. And they want to see not only a clear entrance, they want to see a clear exit strategy as well. We should never put our young men and women's lives at risk when American interests are not clearly defined by the President of the United States, and that's one of the problems this President is doing today.
Congresswoman Bachmann, on the same theme, you opposed the U.S. intervention in Libya. If President Obama had taken the same view, Gaddafi would in all likelihood still be in power today. To be clear, are you advocating a shift away from the George W. Bush freedom agenda with its emphasis on removing dictators from power and promoting human rights?
Well, I want to say, as devastating as our economy is with the policies of Barack Obama, I think that he has actually weakened us militarily and with the United States presence globally. We have, for many years, maintained global order in the world with our United States military. We have the finest military. But in this last debt ceiling debate, one of the alternatives that came forward that we're going to be looking at with this new super committee of 12 different members of Congress is to see that our military could be hit with a huge reduction in resources. The president has not done what he needs to do to keep the United States safe. If you look at the biggest issue in the Middle East, it's a nuclear Iran. And the president has taken his eyes off that prize. As a matter of fact, what he's done is he said, in fact, to Israel that they need to shrink back to their indefensible 1967 borders. I sit on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. We deal with the nation's classified secrets. And I firmly believe that the President of the United States has weakened us militarily and put us more at risk than at any time.
Congresswoman, time, and thank you. I just want to follow up on that. The Arab Spring is a big, big issue in the world, and the question is, what role does the U.S. have, including militarily, to promote democracy and topple dictators? I didn't hear your answer with respect to Libya.
Well, I believe that it was wrong for the president to go into Libya. Number one, his own Secretary of Defense, Gates, said that there was no American vital interest in Libya. If there is no vital interest, that doesn't even meet the threshold of the first test for military involvement. The other thing is we didn't know who the rebel forces were in Libya. Take a look at where we're at in Libya today. Take a look at the oil revenues. We don't know if they will get in the hands of people who will have designs on radical Islam and the implication of a global caliphate. These are very serious issues, and I think it was wrong for the President of the United States to go into Libya.
Senator Santorum, your reaction to Congresswoman Bachmann's stand on what we're watching take place in Libya right up till tonight?
Well, we're in the Reagan Library, and I'm hearing from at least a couple of people on this panel a very isolationist view of where the Republican Party should be headed about pulling troops out with Governor Huntsman and with Ron Paul. The bottom line is Ronald Reagan was committed to America being a force for good around the world. We were a society that believed in ourselves and believed that we can spread our vision to the rest of the world and make this country a safer country as a result of it. We didn't have missions where we put exit strategies saying this date is when we're going to leave. We didn't say that we are the problem and the cause of the problems that confront us around the world. We are a source for good. We could have been a source for good from the very get-go in Libya. But this president was indecisive and confused from the very beginning. He only went along with the Libyan mission because the United Nations told him to, which is something that Ronald Reagan would have melted in like the old Wicked Witch of the West before he would have allowed that to happen. This is a very important issue for our party. Are we going to stand in the Reagan tradition, or are we going to go the isolationist view that some in this party are advocating?
Time.
Governor Huntsman, sure, I'd like to get to you. I've got a question. Your chief political advisor has been quoted very prominently as describing the Republican Party as, quote, a bunch of cranks, and said your opponents on the stage make a buffet of crazy and inane comments. I'm sure that's insulting to some of these people up here. We're now here face to face. Tell us which one of these people are saying crazy or inane things.
Well, I'm sure you have John Weaver's telephone number. You can go ahead and give him a call.
Okay.
But let me just say...
Let me hang on. Then let's follow up on that, because you speak for yourself. You yourself have said the party is in danger of becoming anti-science. Who on the stage is anti-science?
Listen, when you make comments that fly in the face of what 98 out of 100 climate scientists have said, when you call into question the science of evolution, all I am saying is that in order for the Republican Party to win, we can't run from science. we can't run from mainstream conservative philosophy. We've got to win voters. We've got to do what I did as governor when I was reelected. We reached out and we brought in independents. I got independents, I got conservative Democrats. If we're going to win in 2012, we've got to make sure that we have somebody who can win based upon numbers, the math that will get us there. And by making comments that basically don't reflect the reality of the situation, we turn people off. Number two, we've got to have somebody who can lead. This president was successful in getting elected. He can't lead this country. He can't even lead his own party. I'm here to tell you, I can get elected. I can bring the numbers together to make this successful in 2012, and I can lead based upon where I've been as governor.
Governor Perry.